If you're looking to level up your UX, content, or product design practice to confidently and joyfully tackle complexity, ask the million-dollar questions, and design digital systems that actually work, you are so in the right place. Welcome to the UX Level Up podcast. I'm Sophia Prater, and for over a decade, I've been teaching professionals how to make the most valuable and often invisible parts of UX gloriously visible. We will untangle the structure beneath the surface before jumping into screens, saving time, money, and headaches, and having so much fun doing it. Together, let's UX collaboration, break down silos, and build shared understanding that sets everyone up for success. Let's become the systems thinkers that our teams, and quite honestly, the world, are so desperately craving. Let's level up our practice and redefine what it means to be a UX designer. Let's jump into it. Jim Kalbach, welcome to the UX Level Up podcast. It is so great to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here. I really look forward to this conversation, Sophia.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to it for a while. We started talking. Our LinkedIn messages go back for like a couple years now. We started talking a bit more this year about jobs to be done and OOUX and how we're like kind of doing the same thing and how can we like link these together and make them both stronger. And I was also really excited to have you on because there's a lot of people in my sphere, students of mine and people that use object-oriented UX. And there's a pattern here that a lot of people who love object-oriented UX also love jobs to be done. And this bad boy here, the jobs to be done playbook, did sit on my shelf for quite a while. I think I got it soon after you published it. And I have finally read it and I have so many questions and I got so many answers too in here. So yeah, you were the guy behind this book. You were the jobs to be done guy in our UX product design world.
Yeah, I do have a UX background, design and innovation. I kind of came up through the ranks. Information architecture, right? I actually have a degree in information science, called myself an information architect for a very, very long time. So super happy about what you're doing over there with OOUX. Totally get it. A little jealous that I'll never have the opportunity to apply it because I don't do that kind of work anymore. But that's where my head comes from, actually. Came across jobs to be done in 2003 and started dabbling with it and in my own work. But then I started teaching it around 2015-ish. Like at conferences and stuff, I was giving a workshop on jobs to be done, just to kind of help myself figure out how to talk about jobs to be done. So I had workshopped it about 5 years before I wrote the book. And then I thought, I'm ready to put it down in paper. And that's the book that I see you have all dog-eared there.
Oh yeah, heavily dog-eared, heavily marked up. And I love that you said that. One of my mantras is teach what you need to learn. And that's exactly how OOUX evolved. I was like, there's a seed of something that I think I'm onto something now. And then I got put into a teaching position by getting a gig to speak at a conference, Adaptive Path. Shout out to Jesse James Garrett. And then next year doing it as a workshop. And I basically just pitched Jesse James Garrett. It was like, so that talk that I gave last year, can I do it as a workshop? And I had no idea what that would be.
Right.
I just knew that I was onto something. And I was like, I know if I teach this as a workshop, I will learn it.
Right.
So
yeah, and you learn from your participants and your students as well too, because you go out, you put particularly that first workshop, you put so much time into it. I'm going to craft this message, and then the thing that you thought was good, it bombs, right? And people are like, I'm confused, Sophia, right? And they're, oh crap, I better go back to the drawing board on that. And it's that process, I think, that gives you the confidence to then come up with a framework like OOUX or my approach to jobs to be done. But it's interesting because since I wrote the book, and I'm glad you're diving into it, but I've evolved so much more in the past 5 years. It's 5 years old now, actually. And I've evolved quite a bit, too.
Yeah, I totally want to get into that. Like, what's different? How have you grown, the process, and what's changed? But yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, my first workshop, you were saying, like, oh, it bobs, and it's, like, all confusing and everything. I had a lot of confidence at the conference because I did get good feedback, but I look back on it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so confusing. My object maps were like a crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
So like you would go down and you'd start writing down all the core content and all the metadata, and then you get to a nested object, and then I would just have you go out to the left and start building out the structure of the nested object, and then it was so silly, but it was just the process. It had to kind of go through that process to
yeah,
to get to where
you
it is
have to
today.
go through that as an author and as an instructor. I have there's an early diagram out there of my mental model of jobs to be done, and when I see it, I just cringe. I'm like, oh, that's misleading and wrong and blah blah blah. So, but that's 10 years old now. So we move on and things evolve.
Yeah.
And part of what evolves is the language that you use and how you explain things. And I think that's what you learn. Like, the thing doesn't change, but your approach to it and how you instruct others and the models and the frameworks and the visuals, it has to evolve, because you're never going to get it like perfect the first time out,
Right. And there's this great saying that if you're not, it's kind of a tough love thing, but also like you want to get things out there that are imperfect, because like if you want to look back on what you did last year and kind of cringe because you've grown so much,
Totally.
right? That just means you've grown. You could be like, oh gosh, what was I thinking back then? I was so dumb.
Yeah.
Or you could be like, wow, I've grown so much. Let me focus on the gain and not the gap.
Yep.
I'm
right there with you. Yeah. Well said, Sophia. Yeah.
It's really easy to do, to go back to look at writing or something that you've done and be like, oh man, I was so, But yeah, the contrast is actually a really beautiful thing. So speaking of the contrast, so actually I'm curious, did writing this book change how you do jobs to be done?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
At the time, the thing about that book is that I didn't invent any of the techniques in there. It's really homage to all the people before me who have been practicing jobs to be done for, in some cases, decades, 3, even close to 4 decades, some of them. And if you look at all the plays, right, those aren't my methods, right? So really what I was attempting to do was kind of clarify jobs to be done for folks in some of the, upfront chapters. But then I go through all these plays, and it's really reference to all the pioneers that preceded me, but I didn't put forth my own kind of process, right, around it. But the question I got then was, hey, love the jobs to be done playbook, where should I begin? Right. And I started having to answer that question. And okay, I did that. Now what do I do next, Jim? Right. So the thing that I've been doing over the past 4 years is having a much more prescriptive way to look at jobs to be done. That's mine, or not mine, like I invented it. I don't want to sound arrogant here, but my flavor of it. Right.
Well, yeah, that's what we're doing here, is we're standing on the shoulders of giants, both of us, and trying to cobble these things together.
Totally.
For me, cobbling together the work of a lot of content strategists, a lot of information architects, and domain-driven design, developer back, like all that stuff. I'm standing on the shoulders, and but trying to put it together into something that is codified, right? That like people do know where to start. And I think that this is just a sign of our industry evolving, right? I think that we've sort of said for a long time, like, process hampers creativity, or some sort of like every project is different. And that like it's gotten to the point where, or it's been at this point, because I think our industry is new, where there's just been a lot of hand waving on how to do stuff. And I think we're at the point where we need professional processes and professional tools, also because things are getting so much more complicated.
Yep.
So as things are getting more complicated, like we need better tools. We need a better pickaxe, basically, to get at these problems and sharpen up our tools. And if we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants and kind of doing a feature factory where we just churn some screens out based on some user stories, like we're not going to create beautiful holistic experiences that hang together well. Like it's just not going to happen.
I agree. And within that context, things have to evolve. My approach, your approach, it has to evolve. But one of the things that's different about me than other jobs to be done practitioners that I point to, and I still point to them, they're in the book obviously, but I still reference them as, no, they're the real pioneers. One of the differences, I'm not a consultant. So I don't go out, sometimes I do, but not usually go out and say, hey, I'll do the jobs to be done work for you and give you an answer in a PowerPoint deck, just to pick on consulting a little bit there. But my job is I want to educate people so they can do it themselves. And I think that's a big difference because that frame of mind is I'm not explaining to you what I'm going to do as a consultant. I need to explain it to you so you can actually do it. And that forcing function has really been helpful in breaking things down. And then I think I got it broken down to the atomic level. It's like, no, slow down, Jim. You got to go even refine that. So it's really just that process of trying to get someone who has no knowledge of jobs to be done. What's the quickest way that I can explain it to them that they can get up to speed, and then answer the question, what do I actually do? So having those activities there as well too. So the explanation and the activities. But I think for me, that's been a real driver for me as more of an educator than a consultant.
Right. Yeah. I resonate. I'm in the same boat. And doing both is great, right? So that you can kind of go back and forth and not get, I don't want to ever get too much in the ivory tower where I'm not doing the works, because that's also how you learn, right?
Totally.
You kind of go and use your clients as guinea pigs to test out all the new stuff and then bring it back to your students.
Exactly.
So this book here, like you said, it is a very thorough book of an amazing plays. It's this collection of plays that are hung together in a process, but I see what you're saying, how you've been evolving it to be more like, this is where I can start and this is how to get somebody up to speed quickly. There's so much gold in here, but it is almost overwhelming, right? Because there's so much in there, and it's like, there's so many different options on how I could do this. So I would love to hear how it's evolved, how this structure has evolved. Do you want a design challenge to play with, or do you have an example in mind to kind of like talk through it, or do you want to talk through
let me just talk. There's two things that come to mind based on your question there. Let me just talk to them, and then I'd be happy to run through an example. But one is, I think it's chapter 8. It's either the last chapter or the second to last chapter. I talk about this notion in that book that you had there. I talk about this notion of recipes. So I come out of the gate in the book and I talk about job speed at a high level. And most of the book is these separate plays with references and how to actually do that play. And then I say, oh, if you're in this situation, you can take those plays almost as like Lego blocks and put them together in this order, right? So there is a little bit of direction in that last chapter. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't read the end chapters. They go into the beginning and it's like, no, that's where all the answers are, in the last chapter. So I almost wish that was like the first chapter. But then through doing that and then trying to teach this over and over again, I realized that underlying it is what I call a core process. That there's a core process that we can describe no matter what set of plays and what your context is, to basically in 3 phases to frame the job to be done. And there's a way to you need to scope. Any research effort needs scope, but in jobs to be done, the unit of analysis is what I could now call the focus job. And you need to think about ways to scope the focus job, right? And then there's discovery, where you're going out and interviewing people and using AI and then doing the analysis. And then the last phase is what I call spin. And that's synthesizing things and putting it into a format that can be usable to people downstream from you, right? And actually integrating those insights back into whatever the workflow might be. I call that the spin. So frame, discover, and spin, and each of those have 2 subsets. And that's basically what I'm teaching to now when I do my public courses, or I sometimes work with companies as well too. I teach to the 6-stage process. I call it the core process, with frame, discover, and spin. And then there's 2 steps within each of those phases. So again, that's not in the book, but my approach now when I talk about jobs to be done and teach jobs to be done is far more prescriptive. Right? Because you're actually kind of coming into my world, and I'm taking you through that journey on how to go through those steps. And then from there, you can think about, well, I don't need all of it, Jim. I need to frame my focus job, but I'll just skip ahead and write a job story, or I'll do parts of it where if you need. You can think about that. But I think without that core process, the book may be overwhelming, as you said, because it's like you turn the page and I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, right? So I think the new core process that I'm orienting to is a little more grounded.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, the book is amazing. I understand now why people who love object-oriented UX love this too. Like, it all makes sense now. The second half of the book is a lot of business strategy. Like, I was thinking the first half, I'm like, oh, this is how it would link in with object-oriented UX, which I definitely want to talk about. And the second half, I'm like, this is just stuff that I can use for my business to grow my business, not necessarily the products inside, but just really thinking about business strategy. There's just so much gold in it, but I'm so excited for your codified process because, and what you were saying about like, this is something that you have a starting place, but then once you learn it, then you can kind of bend and break it and adapt it. And that's what we need in our field is we need really good, tried and true, solid, repeatable, reliable processes that have good output
That's right.
that are flexible.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That are flexible and adaptable and extensible. And it sounds like basically what we have here is you've got the verbs covered and I've got the nouns covered.
There you go. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I might even pull up some diagrams that I'll try to explain for those listening. There's gonna be a video version too. So hi folks on the video version.
Yeah.
Hi.
Here we are. Wave to everybody.
Hi. We're on a video. Okay, so that is so interesting. Let's actually talk about what jobs to be done is first. So I have some of my favorite definitions bookmarked. I'm going to read my favorite definitions because they're just so good. Okay, right here at the beginning, at its core, the concept of jobs to be done is straightforward. Focus on people's objectives, independent of the means used to accomplish them.
Right.
Through this lens, Jobs to be Done offers a structured way of understanding customer needs, helping to predict better how customers might act in the future. The framework provides a common unit of analysis. Does that sound familiar, OOUXers? For teams to focus on the jobs to be done. And this is the thing that happens with common unit of analysis. Like you got the verbs really solidified.
Yeah.
So those are really clear. And honestly, it's a lot harder because verbs are much more abstract. And then that is what we do in OOUX is we create that common unit. Right?
Yep.
And they go back and forth and they're so nicely intrinsically related to each other.
Right.
And then over here you say, jobs to be done, blah, 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 blah. It provides a systematic framework for creating your own model of people's needs. And like what OOUX does, you wrote that.
I did. I was like, wow, that's that guy is smart.
Yeah. He said a good thing right there, didn't he? And OOUX is the model of the environment where the needs happen, and the model of the solution.
The model of the solution,
So we can, and then there's the model of the needs that sits like kind of. I'm trying to figure out if it's like an Oreo with like OOUX sides and like a jobs to be done filling, or is it like jobs to be done with an OOUX filling? Like that's that's what I'm kind of going back and forth with.
I don't know if the Oreo. You know, I was thinking of the double diamond as you were just talking there, and it's kind of like.
Oh, were you?
Well, because you said OOUX. Model and then models goes into modeling the solution. And by the way, that's where jobs to be done stops, because jobs to be done tells you
double diamond
double diamond there you go. Jobs to be done does not tell you what to build at all, right? What jobs to be done does is says what is the human problem that you need to go solve, right? Particularly in commercial settings, but anybody who's designing something, whether it's digital or physical or a service, whatever, or experience, whatever it is, we're very often so wrapped up in our own world, our solution, and if we work for a company, our brand and our price point and our go-to-market solution, right? And we're thinking about ourselves all day long, and that's fine. And you got to do that
Jim,
as a company.
Our components. Our people are thinking about drop downs and calendar pickers more than they're even thinking. It's all the way down.
Exactly. And the biggest, and you mentioned in that first definition, the first rule of jobs to be done is you need to leave all of that aside and forget about yourself. Sometimes I call it an out-of-body experience. It's like, okay, we got company X over here with a brand and a product, but I don't care. And I'll do that, Sophia. Sometimes when I teach courses, I say, I don't care about your product. Just to shock people that we're not talking about your product for the next 3 hours or whatever my workshop is, right? What we want to talk about is the right problem to solve independent of that. And that mental separation is basically what my process forces you to do, because I force you to do that, right? And the theory is then what that does is it opens up your eyes and you see things in a different light, and opportunities that you might have otherwise overlooked then come to the light in terms of directional, like where should we focus our attention? Again, it won't tell you what solution to build, but where should you focus your attention? And that's where I think then OOUX plugs in amazingly well, because you do start getting into solution space. You kind of set up the architecture of the solution and things like that. Jobs to be done doesn't do that. So they work very well together.
So yes, exactly. And going back to the double diamond, it's like, what I often say, it's not making the double diamond, is that the ORCA process is the third diamond in between. That basically helps you transition, because there's this literally like a weak spot between the two diamonds. Where it's like, we've come up with ours. Yeah, we have a problem statement.
Yeah.
We're clear on the problem. We've got all this research. And then we start sketching some screens.
Right. Yeah. How do we get there? Right. Yeah.
Do like write some user stories and sketch some screens. And then
should this be a radio button or a checkbox? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And diving straight into screens and solutions.
Right.
And so what I like to say is the OOUX process, so figure out your objects, your relationships, your calls to action, and your attributes by synthesizing all of that research provides this bridge into the other diamond where also you get all the questions to pop you back to research. So it tells you what you're not ready to take into design because you're based on too many assumptions. But it can synthesize all that.
That's
so what usually happens when we're synthesizing all the research is or all the research, or, however big or small, for better or worse, we're taking in all of our resources, basically, whether that's just secondary research we're doing on the internet or some user interviews from 2 years ago that have been collecting dust in a Dropbox somewhere. We're just trying to gather all this stuff. And then what we do in OOUX is we do this noun foraging process where we start looking for we're basically breaking it down into language and verbs too. We're looking at the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, and how do we structure that. And so I see jobs to be done as this beautiful way to do the research, to really structure that first diamond.
It's the first diamond. It literally starts at the first point of the first diamond. That's the first stage of my process, right? And then I mentioned the spin cycle is towards the end. But what I do in the spin cycle is what I would do is point to OOUX or point to Teresa Torres' opportunity solution tree and maybe just say, here's how it worked. But I don't teach those things, right? So I fully recognize that jobs to be done tells you what problem to solve and doesn't tell you what solution. But things like OOUX, opportunity solution tree, there's some other things. Those are the things that are going to take you into the second diamond, not jobs to be done.
Right. And I always say that OOUX is a garbage in, garbage out process.
Right.
So if you don't have the good research, like you can create a beautiful orca, you can create a beautiful backbone of a system that nobody freaking wants, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
The orca process will help you get a really good design, but it might not be the right design.
It might not be the right thing.
It might not be the right design. I see jobs to be done as this process upstream that really helps give us amazing input.
That's right.
And so that I'm doing my noun foraging on the job stories, on the job map, like all those artifacts that you're creating. I was looking at the book and I was like, I can just noun forage this, and the nouns come right to the surface.
But that gives you confidence as you go into those activities that you're foraging in the right area, right? And you're not foraging off track. But that also then means
so much easier.
Two things. One is, as you observed in the book, that I think jobs to be done can also have a more strategic application. And if you read Clayton Christensen's book called Competing Against Luck, he used to, unfortunately he passed away, but he was in the stratosphere and he would consult the CEOs of the world's largest enterprises and his co-authors as well too. And they talk about it at a super, super high level, like super, super strategic. Obviously I don't operate at that level, but I think jobs to be done can be applied at that level. The other thing about jobs to be done too is that it's not just for product design or designing a system. I'm writing a guide right now that we're going to launch soon on how jobs to be done can help the field of customer success, or how jobs to be done can help sales, or how jobs to be done can help marketing as well too. And I think that's a big difference as well too, because jobs to be done then becomes kind of a common language that other teams around you can also use to orient to, right? So if you're creating marketing messages or a marketing campaign and you need to come up with content clusters or whatever for your content strategy, right? Well, those content clusters better address unmet needs, right? So you can use the insight from jobs to be done to also drive other activities in your organization.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I'm excited for that guide to come out. Two things. One, you said common language. I think that's another thing that that's what we are both trying to do. And I think doing a good job is creating a common language. Often I see one of the biggest problems on teams is they're just talking over each other, like on different wavelengths. And even like how we talk about our process, we use different words for different things. And then when we talk about our product, we use different word for, the same thing and the same word for different things. And we just have very jumbled language when it comes to our product and our processes. And then we're trying to design complex stuff. So both of us on these two parts of the process are figuring out, okay, what is a language that we can use to talk about our process that actually it's a language to talk about your process that then gives you the gift of a language to talk about your product and your services.
Totally. Yeah.
It's a language to create a language.
No, it is. Absolutely. And language and words matter a lot in the Jobs to be Done framework. That's how you get that actual separation tactically, right? Theoretically, okay, yeah, I'm going to separate the means from the end. Okay, I get that theoretically, Jim. But how you do that, where the rubber hits the road, is in how you actually listen and then write down the insights that you gather from the research. And in my course, I take a deep dive into that. Sometimes people are like, this feels like I got a microscope here, Jim, because what I do is I'll have a quote from an interview, and I go through and I parse it. And I say, there's a verb, that's a potential job step. Here's an adjective, that's a potential success criteria or outcome statement. And we literally, it's kind of like you foraging for the elements of the Jobs to be Done framework at the word level. Like that's how detailed you can go.
Yeah.
And so then what it becomes is a way of listening, and then a language for re-expressing what you heard.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I've heard people say that about OOUX, that it's a way of listening.
Right, yeah.
Like, this is just a way of listening at the different stages of the process.
Yeah.
You're this research diamond, this research and discovery diamond, and I'm in this like third diamond.
I totally get that. Yeah.
But like, it is a way of listening. I've heard people say before that they start color coding when they're hearing people, they're like, oh, that's a blue object, that's a green verb, that's some pink metadata there. Oh, that's probably yellow. And like, their little head cloud has these color coded sticky notes as they're trying to parse like some convoluted thing that a stakeholder is telling them about some nuanced requirement.
Right. And it gets very detailed. And I think that's another commonality between Jobs to be Done and OOUX. You know, in Jobs to be Done, people are like surprised that for any focus job that's a core job that you're researching, you can have 50 to 100 success criteria, these individual statements. People are like, wow, why is it so detailed? And it's because what we don't want to do is write requirements like, we want the interface to be easy to use. You know, it's like, you've heard about the stakeholders going, this should be an easy to use. Well, what's going to make it easy? And then you got to go down you got to be really specific about things to get the experience that you want, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So cool. So I see, like, because you also talk about micro jobs too. So there's the main job and then the micro job. So I'm kind of now thinking that it's like OOUX is the cream in the sandwich and the Oreo. That like, I don't know if this metaphor breaks out a little bit, but if we have if I say OOUX in the ORCA process, it's a garbage in, garbage out process. Jobs to be Done helps refine and give me better inputs, high quality inputs to the ORCA process that are rooted in the problem and the needs of the user and not the technology, not the solution. Chef's kiss. On the other side, once we start breaking down things into objects and relationships and calls to actions and attributes, once we start figuring out what is this system, not necessarily even the solution quite yet. It's like, what is the truth of this system? What are the things that people are thinking, the real world things that people are thinking about in this domain? I can start what we do in OOUX, and I'll tell you how traditionally Jobs to be Done has already been hooked into OOUX. So we identify objects in the system. So I'll give my example that I've been percolating in my head for a while that we can play with a little bit. This is a design challenge that's going to be, I filmed it in the 2021 version of the OOUX masterclass. We are refilming the whole masterclass this fall for cohort 11. And so we're retackling this design challenge. And the design challenge, the code name for it is Species Saver. This is basically a system that helps consumers make more ethical buying decisions. All right. So I'm going to talk as if I'm the customer right now. Okay. Just because I am the ideal customer. So basically, I love animals. Jim, I love animals. And I'm tired of buying products, cosmetics, food products, pantry products, electronics that I know are impacting endangered species. But I don't know exactly how. So what happened is I heard about this whole palm oil thing where the Borneo rainforest is basically being decimated because of palm oil, and we put palm oil in everything. It's in all the Hershey's chocolate bars, it's in all the Colgate toothpaste. And then I started looking into it a little bit more. I'm like, okay, you see the picture of the orangutan holding onto the one tree that's left over and everything else is burnt to the ground. And so I started looking into other implications with habitat destruction and brands and animals. Okay, so looking into the Florida Everglades. So there's a lot of endangered species in the Florida Everglades, sugar industry, Domino Sugar, cutting down all the Everglades, a lot of pesticides sites, going into the Everglades. What I was thinking about as a consumer is like, how nice would it be to be able to be pointed toward brands that are doing better and doing worse, so I can align my buying decisions and I can basically feel good using my products that I have. I have no idea. Like, did this pin, this lipstick here? I have no idea. So that's the problem. I want to play with that from a jobs to be done perspective. Okay. Maybe we can talk about how you would go through your process as me just like a representative user, and how would we kind of frame it that way. Yep. But real quick, some of the objects that I would put. So if we just noun forage with that, if I go customer Sophia to OOUX or Sophia, some words that kept coming up were habitat, animal, product, and brand, right? So those are like macro objects within this domain, and obviously within the problem, because it's a noun that the user keeps saying over and over and over again. But then what we can do is we can actually start, what we did for a long time is we'd write purpose statements for each of those objects. Like, why does that object get to be in the system? We would have a purpose statement for brand, and we started kind of tweaking that to be like, what is the job of this object? Right. If this object gets represented in this system, what is it doing for the user? So animal, like, why does animal need to be there? Oh, and I could start thinking about the purpose of that from a business perspective and from a user perspective. So that's our main hook, is we're already kind of at this like structural level, but with these individual moving pieces, we can start saying, why does it get to be there? What is this supposed to do for people when they look at an instance of an animal? Right.
And that's probably where the notion of a micro job might come in. And, you know, just to go back to that, since you mentioned it too, the thing that I was really trying to show there is that anytime you talk about people's goals, there's always going to be a hierarchy. That is, you say, I'm trying to do X, and you can always go up, right? And Y, you can always go up into the stratosphere. And by the way, it always ends up with love, happiness, and self-actualization if you keep going up, right? But then if you ask how, you go down and you get smaller. And then at some point in time, you're going to start getting so small that it is a solution, right? So jobs to be done operates in the middle, but there's no right or wrong level of abstraction that you can start at. So those levels that I give are not absolute, it's relative, right? But what I wanted to show with the micro jobs is that even though you're getting really smaller, you can still adopt the jobs to be done language, which is to describe things without talking about the technology or the solution in there, right? So it's really just and I think that's maybe an overlap with OOUX. I got to think about that a little bit more.
I mean, the way that I'm just going to pull up, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Sorry, people listening, I'll try to describe, but I feel like this is kind of cool. Okay, so this is where I was thinking of it at first. It's like, okay, there's big verbs that get you to like OOUXing the domain, which then get you to like the steps or the micro jobs, which then get you to like OOUXing the solution.
Maybe there's there's an onion there. That you might be right about the onion,
But it could also happen like this, where like I don't even know the problem yet. And so what a lot of OOUXers do is they'll OOUX a domain. They're like, I want to help with something in healthcare. Like, we're in healthcare, but we're going to do some total, like, one of your beautiful matrices later in the book, it has like that quadrant where it's like new markets, new products, or something like that. So if you're in the new markets, new products, differentiation, disruption, or something like that, you might just want to OOUX a domain. It's like, what are the things that people deal with? Like, what is in their world? Like, what is their world made up of? And that can actually get you to pain points. That can get you to like, this is a job that, whoa, nobody's doing this. Like, this is a really tough job, that there's no help for this in this domain. So it can actually get you to the problem to solve, and then you could OOUX
on the solution.
And then when you get down to like the object level, and then the CTA, so like we basically Y our O's, R's, and C's, and our A's. So it's like, why does this object get to be here? Why does this relationship get to be here? Because it takes development effort and getting two objects to connect and talk to each other. Like, why do they get to talk to each other? Why is it important? And then for the calls to action, it's like, okay, our what we call object-oriented user stories are very much similar to job stories, where we get into the context, the when does this happen and why does this happen? What is the deep motivation for somebody clicking this freaking button? And then we get to those micro jobs at that level. So I don't know, maybe it depends. It could go either way, really.
It could, and in fact, the way that I'm talking about scoping the focus job, I used to say the word domain. What domain are you in? Because you need to identify the actors and then select one as the performer. And then from there, you can look at what are they trying to get done. So the very top level of this process that I described earlier, my core process, really is about what I call it the playing field. What playing field are you in, right? So healthcare could be one. What I try to do at the domain level is not use like classic industry labels. So just as an example, instead of saying real estate, I would say you're in the field of buying and selling homes.
Yeah.
So
well,
at the
for
level,
the species saver example, it's like the intersection of like shopping and like, I don't know, value alignment or something like that would be
right.
the
I mean,
domain.
it could be something like buying and using environmentally friendly products, for instance. Something like that.
Yeah.
I might use as my domain, right? And that's really, in Jobs to be Done, that's just really a frame for your team when you have a conversation around who do we want to create value for, is like, you need to be able to list people in that field. So in Jobs to be Done, we actually start with the job performer. So if we say we're in the field of buying and using environmentally friendly products, right? Then we say, okay, who's in that domain? Well, there's the consumer, there's the producer. So this is really high level stuff, like consumer, producer, there might be some other actors there. And then we say, I want to create value for the consumer. The consumer then becomes your job performer. You say, okay, what are they trying to get done in that domain? And then I think of jobs that they're getting done. And by the way, you don't have to do this in a vacuum. You can actually talk to some people while you're doing this. And you can use AI as well too. But basically you want to think about the who, nominate one as your job performer, and then think about what are they trying to get done. And then you nominate one as your focus job. That becomes then your unit of analysis, is the job performer and the focus job, but it's within that domain. Then what Jobs to be Done does in excruciating detail, it breaks that focus job down into the steps, the outcomes, the emotions, and the circumstances. And we can use that to then model and pinpoint where the biggest pains are.
So good.
Does that make sense?
So good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they just fit together so nicely. So I feel like we need to talk a little bit about the semantics of the job performer. This is something that, like, I think I'm on board now with this. And this is a video that Ali O. Fisher and I put out on OOUX. We did it again, where we were like, is it the job performer, or is the job performer, like, is it really the hiring manager? And we were getting caught up in the semantics of like, you're hiring the solution, but who is doing, is it the person doing the job versus the object doing the job, the product doing the job for them? And I think it's the same. So I was thinking about this with OOUX. So I was doing the meta thing where I was like, well, what's the job of the ORCA process? What is it actually? Have you thought about the job of Jobs to be Done?
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's the job of Jobs to be Done? Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's to
what is it?
Ultimately, it's to help us find the right problem to solve.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been playing with this for like, what is the job of OOUX? Because I realized last year, and if I had been paying attention to Jobs to be Done more, I probably would have come to this sooner. But I came to the realization that like nobody wants OOUX or the ORCA process. They want what it gives them.
That's right. That's right.
And what is it that it gives them?
I agree.
Hence the rebrand. My podcast was called the OOUX podcast for years. And I'm like, it's about leveling up. It's about tackling complexity. It's about asking better questions. I've identified these 5 level ups of that. Those are the first 2. Tackling complexity, or expanding your capacity for complexity, asking better questions, basically making the invisible parts of the UX process visible and collaborative, and like feeling really confident in your design decisions and being able to defend your design decisions because it actually makes sense to how the human brain processes information. So if I think about that as the job to be done of the ORCA process, is that the same job of a UX designer? So my job performer is the UX designer, right? And they hire the ORCA process to help them do all of those things, right? But that's really their job too. Like, I believe that a user experience designer's job is not to create a bunch of screens. A user experience designer's job is to
tackle
break down complexity for the team and help and synthesize it, be the Tinkerbell of complexity, so the whole team can come together and understand and to ask all the questions and to make it collaborative, to UX the collaboration so we're all working together, and then of course to design stuff that makes sense to the human brain. But it's the same, right? It's the job of the solution, the job of the person is the same.
Right. It's, well, in Jobs to be Done language, that would be the job of the, it's always the person has a job. And I think it's just the semantics. It's, they hire OOUX to get that job done, but they can hire other things as well too. Right? So from the OOUX standpoint is, I would say more, that's the value that OOUX provides to a UX person. The value of UX is it helps you tame complexity. Their job is to tame complexity, but there might be other ways to get it done, right? You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
So
it's like
objects don't have jobs. People have jobs because it's human goals.
I think objects have jobs too. Because you even say, like, there's somewhere where you say, to quote you, adult diapers have an important job of avoiding social embarrassment.
I would reformulate that.
In the book where you
the job of the job performer, the person wearing the diapers, is to avoid social barriers. I would reformulate that. See, this is why I gotta update my book. I would say the value of adult diapers fulfills an important social job for the job performer.
There is value to think about the job of the object and think about people hiring a solution or even pieces of the solution. Yeah. It's creating a job description for that thing. And there is a lot of value. So to think about, okay, what is the user trying to get done? Right. What is their job? How does it align to their overarching needs? What outcomes are they looking for? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And then once we start getting to the architecture of a potential solution within the domain, we can say, because we need to interrogate every object, because every object costs money within a system. Yeah. So to be really, really clear on why are we doing this from a business perspective? What is its job from a business perspective? What is this like when we put the animal out there? Oh, we can increase donations or something like that. And what is its job from the user perspective? Yeah. Okay, it builds empathy. There's all the reasons that we would want to introduce this as part of the solution. And you can write it from a thinking perspective versus just saying, what's the purpose of this thing? To say, what is the job description? What do people actually want from this? It has a lot of value.
I agree. I see where you're coming from. I would still say that there's a slight difference between a product or a solution or an object gets a job done. But from a jobs to be done perspective, we're trying to interrogate the market and find needs. And I would argue an object doesn't have any needs. Only people
doesn't have a
needs.
need.
Right.
Okay.
Right. An object doesn't have a need, so it gets a job done. But the person that the unit of analysis for us is the job, but we're interrogating people, humans, right? That we want to understand the human condition. So the job performer has a job, the solution gets a job done for them. There's a slight difference there, but in shorthand, we talk about things having a job to be done, but it's really they get the job done for the person. And the research that we do in jobs to be done is qualitative at first, but it can also then get quantitative, right? We can ask people to rank unmet needs and things like that. You can't research an object and ask it what its unmet needs are. You know what I mean? I can't say, hey, I have 1,000 environmentally friendly products. Let me ask those products where their unmet needs are. You know what I mean? But job performers, you can go out and ask and interview.
Yeah, for sure.
That's from a jobs to be done perspective, how we would see it.
To clarify, though, I wouldn't say we would interrogate all the instances of the product. We would interrogate the cookie cutter product, not all the cookies. So there's thousands of instances of product, but why does the concept of product get to be in this? And it might be from a business perspective, affiliate links. Yeah. It's gonna that's the why. Yeah. And then from the consumer perspective, well, I realize I can't use any of these Colgate products. Now what do I use? Right. So it provides
I get your point, but you can't interview a cookie cutter. If you interview a cookie cutter, they're not going to tell you anything, right?
They're not going to tell you anything, but the user is going to tell you, or the business can tell you.
Correct. But I think what you're talking about is something a little bit broader that is actually kind of near and dear to my heart, which is the mindset shift of it's not about that thing, it's about what it gets done, right? And for me, I call that jobs thinking, which I don't want to coin another term with the word thinking at the end, design thinking, everything thinking. But it's what you're doing is you're applying a jobs to be done mindset to that specific problem. And I think that's super healthy, right? There's an important difference that things don't have needs, people have needs. That's all I'm saying.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. We can meet there in the middle. I love it. I love it. Okay. So do you have time to do a quick help me out with the species saver thing, and how would I frame it from a jobs perspective? Yeah. Okay. So if let's say you have me as the user research, what do we do? Frame it. Frame, scope, focus.
So I'm not doing research on you right now. What I need to do as a jobs to be done researcher is define the job performer and define the focus job, right? So I think in this case, based on what you said, and I have a way to talk through this, like you can do a stakeholder map and things like that. And by the way, in jobs to be done, it's what's important to the people that we want to serve, but it's also what's important to us. Right. So there's a strategic question in jobs to be done as well, too. Right. Obviously, we care about what people are doing, but it also has to be like, well, how do we want to grow right now, or what's strategically relevant to us? So you pick job performers and focus jobs that make sense to you as an organization, because it's the organization that consumes the jobs to be done output. So that plays a role at the top down decision of where do we want to innovate or where do we want to create value, right? So in the field that we just mentioned, buying and using environmentally friendly products, there's a bunch of potential actors or people in there. And based on what you said, it's going to be a consumer. Right, I think is who we want to focus on, right? We could also talk about some other producers and shippers.
Brand advocates.
Brand advocates. We can talk about retail, people and things like that. But if we just then put the consumer up there, then the next question is, okay, what are consumers trying to get done? And what we can at first do is just kind of list a bunch of things. They're going to be at different levels of granularity. Some of them will be more specific than others and things like that. But they want to buy products. They have to stock a pantry. They might have to feed a family. Or they might have to take care of their personal hygiene, right? So we can talk about some of those things. And then what we would do with that conversation is put it on what I call the jobs to be done hierarchy. As I mentioned, there's different levels. And some of those things would be aspirational. Like we say, what is a consumer of environmentally friendly products trying to get done? Well, they're trying to save the planet. Right? Save the planet is a bad starting point for jobs to be done because there's so many ways that you can do that. We want to come down a little bit. I would put that at the top of my pyramid and say that's an aspiration, right?
Yeah. Would you say an aspiration would be like something like I want to feel like everything in my home and all the products I use have good vibes that are like, there's no bad vibes in here.
There's no beginning and end to that. And there's multiple ways that you can solve that. With jobs to be done, our unit of analysis is a focus job, but it needs to have a beginning, middle, and end because we call it jobs to be done. So that focus job has to be done at some point in time, right? Does that make sense? Right? So we frame things in a more functional way. Those aspirations still play a role and emotions play a role, but the way we frame the focus job is in more of a functional way, and there's an endpoint there to it, right? So what are they trying to do? They're trying to find information about product ingredients and sources, right? They're trying to find trustworthy products, or maybe compare sustainable products, or
publicly boycott brands that are cutting down the border rainforest.
Identify brands that I don't want to be associated with, right? And we can put those out there. Maybe it's also reduce my carbon footprint or reduce household waste or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So we can explore that space of an eco-friendly consumer, and we could explore that. If we need to, we can go out and talk to a few and say, what are you trying to get done before we decide on our focus job? So again, this doesn't have to end in a bubble, right? Maybe if we take the one like be informed about the ingredients in my products, right? Or in the, I'd have to think of a more sophisticated way to say that.
If I put my subject matter expert hat on, subject matter expert hat on, and this is what I did incorrectly the first time around, is I focused on an ingredient as an object, and it turns out that it's very difficult to track supply chain of ingredients.
Gotcha.
So you could have palm oil, but you have no idea. Well, so it's more about the brand or even the product level,
so
but the ingredient level is hard.
Yeah, I was going down the wrong track there. So maybe it's something like find or identify environmentally friendly products. Identify environmentally friendly products. I would use that as my focus job. So what I have is the field of, what did we say? Buying and selling eco-friendly products. I have a consumer and they're trying to identify eco-friendly products, right? What I then do is I break that focus job down into 4 buckets of information. What are the job steps? How do you get that done? And that's the job map, which usually has about 12 to 20 steps. So we don't go into excruciating detail. It's kind of executive summary job map. And then we look at what I'm now calling success criteria is how do they measure success? How do they know they did it well, right? And that's where we're going to have 50 or more of those statements there. We want to know what emotions they have while they're doing that, how they want to feel. And we want to know under what circumstances makes a difference in how the job gets done. So those become then the categories of information that you're distilling from your interviews, and you want to map all those things out. Oh, and by the way, we have an aspiration at the top, as we mentioned, like save the planet. And those aspirations I very often call B goals, because it's what you want to become by doing that thing, right? I want to become, a model of my community or whatever, something up there. That doesn't necessarily have an end state, and there's multiple ways you can do it, right? But what did we say? Find trustworthy, eco-friendly products. I forget what we just said as our focus job. What I would then do is go out and research that. I would talk to eco-friendly consumers and say, how do you find trustworthy products, eco-friendly products, right? And then I would in excruciating detail gather those elements, the steps, the success criteria, the emotions, and the circumstances. And from that, then I can do some modeling and analysis, right? I can prioritize the job step, which one's the hardest to get done. I can prioritize the success criteria, and I can do that quantitatively, and I can really find what the unmet needs are. I can see which emotions are biggest at play, and I can understand the circumstances, right? Once you do that prioritization of those 4 buckets, you can then synthesize things and then inject that into in my spin cycle. You can inject those into product requirements, or brainstorming, or road mapping, or marketing campaign planning, right? You guys should talk about these things, because those are the biggest unmet needs in the market. That's super quick. I usually teach this in 6 hours. I gave it to you in 6 minutes. And it was very fuzzy. Here's the thing about jobs to be done too, because words matter. You're not always going to get the right phrase on the first time. Like the way that you formulate a job step, you'll be listening, type a job step, and that sucks. And you let it sit, and you come back. Oh, I have a better way that I can formulate that job step or the success criteria, right? So I just went through it really, really, really quickly. But you need to sit with the language a little bit with that model of those 4 buckets. But basically, the focus job becomes the unit of analysis. We break it up into these 4 different buckets. We each has a rule of formulation, by the way. So what goes in that bucket is very, very well defined. Then you prioritize each of those elements, and then you can bring that back together, and people downstream from you go, here is the problem we need to solve. And I'm very confident that this is the right problem to solve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Let me check, make sure there's no other burning questions that I need to ask before I let you go. But I think I got to most of it. Can I show you real quick how I tried to OOUX jobs to be done?
Sure.
To help me understand it a little bit more?
Nice. Do you OOUX things in your daily life? Your
everything.
relationships and household and stuff like that?
OOUXers, we start applying it to more and more. I think it can apply to service design.
Right.
We've applied it to really anything you need help understanding.
Yeah.
Because it's a tool for understanding.
Yeah, right.
So I've done it with news stories, not understanding the things that are happening in the Middle East. I've done that. I've done it with my goals and my values. So thinking about how goals, my values, my habits, my tasks, my projects all intersect. You can kind of OOUX your inner world, your thoughts and your feelings. What's the difference between a thought and a feeling and a belief? Okay, this is just a belief, and this belief causes these, I have notion tables of that stuff. And how they all connect. It's super nerdy and super fun, and it's for a special breed of person who really loves organizing things and connecting the dots. So when I was going through the book,
and nothing that I just described is actually in the book. As I said, I've evolved. That's kind of what I've learned since then. So I guess I need to write another book is what we're saying here.
Give OOUX a little shout out.
Oh, definitely.
I want to know more about your course too, but let me just show you this real quick. And I'm happy to share this with you and go over this a little bit more. But basically I started doing this as my noun foraging of we've got oh, and why are my little guys all over the place? Oh Lord. So we got process, and process is a group of stages, and job map and job step versus sub job, and then we've got job, and job has a different type of functional, emotional, social, but also the size of the job is also kind of metadata on the job of what level is it at. And then we got job statements, but and we got job statements, we got need statements, and we got outcome statements. We got a lot of statements. And then we got job stories. So that's where it gets confusing. At least for me. I was wait, job statement versus job story versus need statement versus outcome statement. It's getting a little fuzzy.
Well, first of all, I'll simplify it. A need and an outcome are the same thing. Those are synonyms. And I've moved on, and I call them success criteria now. I don't use either of those labels.
Gorgeous. Pick a term and stick with it. That's why some of these things, when we get a lot of synonyms, and it's wait, are those the same things or those different things? Job performer versus hiring manager. We'll call them job performer. And then for me,
I don't use the word. I didn't use the word hiring manager, did I?
That's my word.
Oh, that's your word. Okay.
That's my word, because you hire a product.
I got you. Okay.
And then solution versus product, and then I started to kind of map it out here of like main job is a one-to-one relationship with a job map, which is a one-to-one relationship with a job statement. So starting to look at the cardinality of these.
Yeah.
And then like main job to sub job. So starting to make these little models like this so that I can kind of, and this is where I'm mapping how I think it maps to OUX. So you have like the job performance, an ethical shopper. Outcome is making buying decisions that align with my animal. So that was my first like outcome, right? Of like what I want is I want my buying decisions to be so aligned so I don't feel hypocritical and I don't feel like the bad juju. The domain is shopping and the domain is made out of object. And then we get down to jobs, which is like connect the wildlife threats with the brands. Like I need to understand this Borneo rainforest and Colgate, like connected. Borneo rainforest and Hershey's. Florida Everglades and Domino Sugar. And so then we get to like the jobs, even in your job statements, a job has a direct object, right? And then the clarifier, it's like actually part of how you structure a job. So these have like, you do a thing to a thing. Yeah. And so then we can start thinking about, okay, we've got domain level objects and then we've got job level objects. And then the product has its own objects, right? That you can pull down if you're noun foraging from your jobs. So yeah, so this is me just trying to piece these things together.
No, it's good. This is very interesting and helpful for me to see as well too.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it with you. But tell me before I let you go. So you're working on a new guide. Make sure to get that to me. I will love to share that with my audience. And you have a course. I didn't know you had a course. Yeah. We should like take each other's course or something. Yeah. I have another. So I have two. We have two courses. I have a video course that's self-serve online, and then we also run live trainings too, which are a little more intensive and a lot more hands-on. And we have another cohort coming up in September 8th. We do 3 days within 1 week. Oh my gosh. September 8th. Wait, 3 days?
10th and 12th. Yeah, with 1 day in between. So we go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours a day.
Oh my gosh. So
a little bit of homework in between.
Cohort 11 starts on September 8th as well.
Oh, your cohort? Okay, so I guess we can't do that. But we also
should we do a bundle deal?
Oh, we could. We could. Yeah, we could. Oh, they won't be able to take both. They won't be able to do it. And then we have another
one. 3 days. Mine is 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks.
So, yeah. This is more of the boot camp style that we do, and then we have another cohort in November. So this is all from the Jobs to Be Done toolkit. That's the website where I have some resources and a little bit of this updated thinking, and I have a canvas because everybody needs a canvas, a Jobs to Be Done canvas. You can download it free there. It's jtbdtoolkit.com. So you find out all of the online course and the canvas for free download and the live courses at jtbdtoolkit.com.
Cool. All right. Well, we will definitely link that in the show notes. And we should talk. Maybe we do. Maybe not this year because it's like happening tomorrow or something. But or the November. But we should do some sort of like bundle thing. Sure. And take each other's courses and just keep exploring the connection between these because we're both trying to solve the same thing. It's like, which I feel like is slowing the roll for people going straight into the solution. Right. People going straight into whether it's screen design or product design and just jumping in. We're trying to slow it down so we can get success faster in the long run.
It's slow down the speed up, right? Because if you think about how many do-overs or failed projects you have or how much friction and churn you have in your project cycles, taking a moment to look at what the problem is and really understand it from the Jobs to Be Done perspective and from the OOU perspective is super, super valuable. So you say slow down, but you're not trying to slow down progress. You're trying to de-risk what's going to happen downstream. And one of the biggest symptoms that I see with the teams that I work at, I work at Mural and I work with teams around the world. One of the biggest problems that I see is jumping to solutions too quickly. I think it's like human nature that if you're given a challenge, the next thing you're going to say is, what's the solution, right? And then you start drawing screens or whatever, right? You're already in there and it's like, wait a minute, do people need this? Wait a minute, how do we architect the domain around it, right? I think there are some other important questions in there that set you up for success. Ultimately, right? And this idea of taking a moment and reflecting on the problem with these techniques is not only healthy, it's going to save you time in the end.
Yeah. And like, it'll save your mental health maybe because freaking trial and error over and over again is exhausting and yes, we want to run experiments. We want to run calculated experiment.
Exactly.
Right?
No, exactly.
Not
right.
just be like, let's just throw some shit at the wall of the universe and see if it sticks, which is what people are doing. It's just like, let's just make a bunch of experiments.
But, you can constrain that field of experimentation, right? Did we have the right problem? Do we have the right modeling of the domain? Okay, let's run an experiment in here rather than a shotgun experiment. Shoot the shotgun in the wrong direction. Okay, that didn't work. Turn around and shoot it again. That's a waste of time. And I see that happening. People are MVP, let's get it out the door. Okay, you just wasted 3 months with your team.
Okay, I have one last question for you. Thank you for staying so long. One last question. Okay, for the UX designers out there that are in situations where leadership, the direction is very much, let's just run a bunch of experiments. Let's just throw, it's maybe a little bit of a feature factory environment where, people are working on like a half a screen here or a feature there. And it is very much, feels like moving the deck chairs around on a sinking Titanic or something like that. What would you say to those people? How can they make the case for something like OOUX jobs to be done for that higher level thinking? What would you say to people in that situation?
Well, one of them is, start small. So if you are on a big project that's in the critical path, strategic path of your company, you might not be able to slow that down. But on the other hand, too, the way that I got into jobs to be done, I was a UX designer, right? I was just doing it and I wasn't calling it that and I wasn't telling anybody either, right? So there's also covert ways to bring the thinking in, right? And say, well, how about this, guys, right? But the other thing is to find a business champion or stakeholder or sponsor that will get behind you. And one thing that attracted me to jobs to be done, because it has these strategic implications and it actually comes from the business community. Jobs to be done is not a design tool. It actually comes from the business community. I find that it's a way often to get business people's ears. And that was the thing that attracted me to jobs to be done, because it's all human-centered stuff that we're doing, right? And there's overlap here and overlap there. The unique thing about jobs to be done for me is that you'll find business folks want that. And if you get a business folks ear and say, we're not solving the right job to be done, they might be able to help you stop that project, right? Or whatever you think, or slow it down, or carve out time to do that, right? So find a champion, start small, and work your way grow into it.
I love that advice. We talk about quiet OOUXing a lot, so you can quiet GTBD as well.
Totally.
So for everybody listening, y'all give it a try. Try to connect the dots there. Tell us how it works out when you merge jobs to be done and OOUX. If you already are doing that, I know that you're out there, please reach out. Go to forum.OOUX.com, direct message me. Let me know how it's going, and I'll get with Jim and tell him how it's shaking out. Anything else you want to let people know, how to find you? Any other parting words?
Yeah, head on over to the Jobs to be Done Toolkit, jtbdtoolkit.com. But I also like to connect with people on LinkedIn. So if you're this long into this podcast and you're hearing my voice now, find me on LinkedIn. I'll connect with you as a bonus.
Yes, hopefully that will be like in the dozens of people, maybe the hundreds. Right. We'll see. If you made it this long, this has been a long one, but it's been a juicy one. So yes, thanks for listening. And Jim, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the good work that you are doing. And let's just continue to collaborate and make both of our processes stronger, because I think that they just link together so nicely.
I do. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the great work.
All right. Cheers. Happy OOUXing, everybody, and happy JTBDing. Thank you so much for listening to the UX Level Up podcast. If you want to connect with me, Sophia, please follow me on Instagram at SophiaVUX, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Sophia Prater. I'm pretty easy to find there. Our music was brought to you by Ruby Vell, courtesy of Sugaroo Records. Thanks again for listening.